There's a group of 4 people sitting and drinking wine just at an overlook. And I was just like, that looks nice.
I know. What have I been doing? Trying to do all these hikes and see all these sights. I just need to sit for a minute.
I know.
This is the Exploring the National Parks podcast with Dirt in My Shoes. My name is Ash, and I'm a former park ranger and the founder of Dirt in My Shoes. I think that the parks are best seen from the trail, and I'm here to make national park trip planning easy.
And I'm John. I carry the kids on the trails, I tell stories, and notice all the things that Ash doesn't care about much, like trees.
Join us as we show you around America's spectacular national parks.
We're sharing our favorite places, fun facts, adventures, and misadventures.
And we'll even throw in a little trip planning.
Let's start exploring.
Today we're taking you on a road trip with us.
Yoo-hoo! I love road trips.
I know, and I love these episodes because it gives us a chance to really talk more about what our trips look like, actually. So this is a real road trip that we took this summer. We've been to these parks multiple times before, but this time it was a shorter trip. We were just trying to hit some new things that we've never done and piece it all together. We flew this time instead of driving all the way east, which made a difference.
However, I will say, despite the fact that we flew out there, this road trip continued a trend that only started this year, which is that this is the year of Buc-ee's for our family.
We'd never been to a Buc-ee's before till we went down to Texas to see the eclipse.
Somehow, despite all of our travels, we didn't know Buc-ee's was a thing.
I didn't know it was a thing.
Or we just somehow avoided all the Buc-ee's locations. No idea how we did it.
No, because I don't know. Are the ones in Tennessee new? Because we've driven through Tennessee before. And it's really hard to find big gas stations.
Yeah.
For our travel trailer when we're pulling it. So I think if we would have passed a Buc-ee's, we would have stopped because it would have been like, yay, they have enough space for us with our giant travel trailer.
I know. So. I don't get it but this year has been the year of Buc-ee's for us. And we have enjoyed it.
Our youngest son is obsessed with the beaver nuggets. So every time we see a Buc-ee's, he's like, yes, beaver nuggets. And our other son doesn't like the beaver nuggets, but he likes the fudge.
Right.
And we found edible cookie dough last time, which was very delicious.
And we've tried the different puddings.
All the different puddings.
The pulled pork sandwiches or brisket.
Hit it hard. Yeah.
Or sausage on a stick. Lots of different things. Our eyes have been opened to the Buc-ee's world, and it's cool. I like it.
I know.
And now there's one close to our home, sort of.
No. No, it's in Denver, 8 hours away. That's as close as we can get from home, I think.
Exactly.
But yeah, anyway, that's been funny.
But that was part of our trip to Tennessee, so I loved it.
And something new we've not done until this year, which was true. But today we want to take you on a 10-day road trip through Tennessee, North Carolina, and Kentucky, hitting the national parks there. This is an area where there's like an infinite number of things to do. So this definitely isn't going to cover like everything that you could possibly do along this route. But it's the trip we just took this summer. And I wanted to just walk you through what our trips look like, kind of the logistics of getting to all 3 of these states and the national parks there, some of the other stuff we like to add in when we're in the area. And so let's jump right in. Day 1, you got to get yourself to Tennessee. And we decided to fly into Nashville. We really like Nashville. And it's a good location, like if you're wanting to do a loop.
Right.
But you could also fly into Asheville, North Carolina. You could fly into Knoxville, Tennessee to get yourself closer to the Smokies. That works too. But we decided to fly into Nashville because I love Nashville so much.
It's so much fun.
And I just wanted to go hit the honky tonks, and I just wanted to go feel like I was having a party for a minute.
Which honky tonk was your favorite this time?
I don't know. So I really like Kid Rock's because it just feels like a party. It like makes me feel like I'm young and fun again.
Which you are, babe.
Right. Yes. Thank you. You're obligated to say that. But some of the smaller ones are like a little more of the better honky-tonk feel. So just kind of depends on my mood.
Our kids loved, and you can take kids in there if it's during like matinee time and stuff like that. You can go in early.
It's kind of hard with kids, but the honky-tonks will typically start kicking them out around 6 p.m. So if you get in there before that, they can still go in and listen to the music, and you can get some French fries or whatever you want to keep them busy while you listen to the music. Which was fun.
They really enjoyed some of the different vibes of the different places we went to, but they did love the Hanging Cadillac at Nudi's Honky Tonk.
Yeah, we like Nudi's. That's a good one. That's like an OG honky tonk in Nashville. So,
yes.
Yeah, it's just
spelled just how you would think it's spelled. But it's if you've not been there, it's not what you think it is. It's a very classy establishment.
As classy as a honky tonk can be.
Exactly.
So we flew into Nashville, and we spent the afternoon and evening in Nashville downtown on Broadway Street, just listening to music, going to the honky tonks. I always look forward to eating at Hattie B's for some Nashville hot chicken.
Right.
It's so good.
Oh, I got it really hot this time, and it almost killed me. It was so spicy.
Yeah, he didn't enjoy it that much this time. It was like way too hot. And
I was so glad that Ash didn't finish hers, because I was like, I need something to cool me off.
And I'm a wuss. I don't get Southern, which is the one with no spice. I do get mild. And even that is just like, oh, that's a little much for me.
It's respectable.
It's not. And not in hot chicken standards, but it's enjoyable for me to eat. So that's what I do. So Nashville is super fun. What we did is we flew into Nashville. We enjoyed the honky tonks that evening. We went to Hattie B's for dinner. And then for day 2, we stayed in Nashville for the morning and did something brand new that we've never done.
It was so cool.
And that was Andrew Jackson's Hermitage, which is his home and his land. And it was really interesting. I loved it.
We learned a lot. I feel like I didn't know anything about him before we were there, because I don't know. I just thought he was a crazy dude, and something about a wheel of cheese. That's kind of all I knew beforehand. But then we got there and we learned a lot about him, and he's a really interesting president. It was a really unique experience.
And it was a beautiful house. Like, I love touring old stuff like that. The kids stayed pretty interested, actually. There wasn't as much like lingering and learning as I would have liked with the kids, but they did okay. And they talked a lot about Andrew Jackson and the family. They also talked a lot about the slaves that he had and their lives too, which I thought was really interesting. They did a good job of showing both sides of all the people that lived there. So I did appreciate that, and just learning more about Andrew Jackson and his life and his presidency. It was cool. And that's right there in Nashville.
The context of how the country was at that time, which was really interesting. The war with England and New Orleans and everything. They covered it all.
Yeah.
It was fun.
So we learned a lot, and that was really cool. So that's definitely something that I would add. We've been to Nashville. I've been to Nashville quite a few times at this point, and that was something that I've always wanted to do but never have done. And I was glad we did it. So we did that in the morning, and then from there we drove to the Smokies, which is about a 3-hour drive if you're going from Nashville to the quiet side of the Smokies, the peaceful side of the Smokies, which is Townsend, Tennessee.
We kind of gave ourselves whiplash a little bit with some of the craziness of going from Nashville to Townsend and then to Gatlinburg.
Yeah. Townsend is it's so quiet and cute. There's not like a lot of really good lodging options. There's a couple restaurants. It's definitely a different pace of the Smokies, which I really appreciate.
It's the slower side of things. It's
is
so fun. It's so nice and pretty.
So what we did is we stayed in Townsend for days 3 and 4. And when you're in Townsend, you're super close to Cades Cove, which is one of the most popular areas of the Smokies. You can get in there. What's nice is if you're coming in from Townsend, you can get there way earlier than everybody else.
Yes.
Because it's just kind of, you just pop down in there. You're way closer to it than from Gatlinburg.
And that's a big deal because there's so many people coming in from Gatlinburg.
It is. And the other thing that we did this time is we went into Cades Cove in the evening for sunset. and we saw 5 bears and hardly any people.
Yeah. It was so cool.
That was the time to be there. If you have already done Cades Cove and you've already stopped at all the cool buildings and done the Cades Cove thing, then going back in the evening and just looking for bears is awesome. So much fun.
It was cool.
So that's really cool. That's a cool thing to do. From Townsend, we like the Metcalf Bottoms picnic area. That's a really fun picnic area with tables right near the water. So you can wade in the creek. People bring like their big blow-up tubes and just kind of play in the water.
It's such a big picnic area that it's almost impossible not to get a spot.
Yeah.
It's so big, and the river is right there going along the whole entire distance of the picnic area. And so it's just a fun place to explore with the kids and, I don't know, get your feet wet. Yeah.
So we really like that picnic area. And then we also like going up to the Little Greenbrier School, which was the schoolhouse for the kids that lived in that area. That was really interesting. We timed it perfectly because they do have like historians or volunteers at the school on Tuesdays. And so we got to actually, the lady who was there knew some of the Walker sisters that lived right around there that homesteaded in the Smokies for a long time. So anyway, her insights were really cool. And that's a fun little activity we like to do from that area as well.
Yeah.
In addition to that, you can do the Spruce Flat Falls hike. We really like that one. We like driving the Foothills Parkway on that side. That drive like never has that many people on it.
No.
It always surprises me.
If Townsend is the quiet side and the Foothills Parkway is the forgotten side, it feels like, because nobody is there.
Yeah. I mean, we felt like we had it all to ourselves and got some really pretty Smoky Mountain views from... It's part of the park, but it's separate from the main chunk of the park. So it's kind of an interesting setup. But yeah, you've got like the Look Rock campground up there and stuff like that. But you can drive along this Foothills Parkway and get really nice mountain views from there. So we like to do that from the Townsend side. But I think besides Cades Cove, like the number one activity from this particular trip was the tubing that you can do in Townsend.
Oh my gosh, it was so much fun and so funny in so many ways. It was a blast.
So you can tube the river right there in Townsend, and they have different outfitters that will give you the tube and shuttle you and stuff. We used River Rat, which I would absolutely do again.
Right.
It was a great experience. But basically, they give you a tube, and you walk down to the river, and you get in your tube, and they say, just make sure you get out at this point and have fun. And I just wanted, I was just like, what else do I need to know, please?
Right.
Because being in water scares me a little bit. John loves stuff like that. I was mostly nervous about my kids going down on their own tube.
Right.
Because I feel like I can barely help myself not hit rocks and trees and stuff. And so I was like, I have to hold on to my 7-year-old's tube at the same time. It was a little bit scary for me. I'm not going to lie. And we saw our fair share of people hitting trees.
Yes.
Branches.
Yes. I laugh at Ash, but there were situations where you did need to be attentive. I
didn't hit any trees this time.
You did good. I did
hit some rocks.
And I guided you pretty well.
I know. And I did sit up a lot, or I'd put my feet down and stand because it wasn't very deep. I did fall off my tube at one point, and it was like the only deep part of the river. So I just had to float for 5 minutes until it was shallow enough for me to get myself back in the tube.
Oh, there was one spot in particular that was just really funny. And it was while we're trying to get our bearings. And the tubes are a little bit larger. And so our kids and Ash couldn't navigate around the river as easily as I could.
My arms weren't long enough. I'm a shorty, and it was really hard for me to keep my bum in the tube and still have my arms over the tube with enough force to propel myself.
Exactly.
And the kids had the same problem, even worse, because their arms are much shorter.
But my job was basically to be a water skeeter or a tugboat and just move around and kind of keep everybody where they need to be, or keep us all together. And there was this one spot where it was near the beginning, and It was just really cute.
And I was still freaking out, okay? Like, I relaxed a little bit as the float went on, but the beginning was a little tense for me.
It was. But what we had kind of decided to each parent have the child, and I had the older child and she had the younger child, and we were kind of holding on to each other's tubes and things like that. Well, we came upon some smaller rapids when there was a tree that was somewhat draped over the side of the river, and you definitely didn't want to run into it, from what we could tell.
Whoever wants to run into any tree?
Exactly. And so
I don't want to run into a tree, okay?
And so I was trying to tell Ash, I could see where the current was going. And so
I was trying, but I couldn't, like, my arms weren't long enough to maneuver.
Oh my gosh.
I knew I needed to get over. I just couldn't.
And so I'm like tugboating me and my older son out into the proper spot. And Ash and our younger son just keep drifting and drifting towards this tree. And then I just watched the funniest thing. It was just hilarious. Ash and my younger son separate. And my younger son, he's so small, the tube is so big that he basically just like is engulfed by the tube. He like
cocooned into it, so he had bumper tube all around him. So
exactly.
Even if he hit stuff, it never hit him because he was just like cocooned down into this tube.
So regardless of the danger, he was literally just like in a lounge chair at the pool, is what he looked like.
Yeah.
I'm paddling over as fast as I can to come and get him and Ash. And when I finally get to him and Ash have already gone through this obstacle with the tree. And I get over to him and I'm like, dude, what's going on? And he's like, Mom, let go.
I was way down the river. It's every man for himself. So I was going to hit the tree. I panicked. I let go of his tube. He just like stayed there at the tree and the log jam that was right there, just lounging. And I went down the rapids myself.
Yep. He was fine. She was fine. Everybody was fine.
He did feel a little bit betrayed. I think he keeps bringing it up like, well, Mom just let go of me.
Oh my
gosh. I didn't mean to. I'm sorry. I panicked.
It was so funny. But overall, I mean, there was a cliff jumping spot. The weather was hot and the water was perfect. An amazing experience.
I would do it again.
Yes.
So that's always a good review from me when it comes to water sports. It's like, I freak myself out so much sometimes that if I will do it again, by the time I get to the end, then that means it was pretty darn good.
Yes.
So
exactly.
We love that. I love the Townsend side. It's just a slower pace. There's not as much to do in the Smokies from this side without driving really far. And so we like to do a couple days over here and just kind of hang out, do some tubing, do a little bit of hiking, go to Cades Cove, but have a nice slower pace.
Right.
So I highly recommend that. So that was our days 3 and 4. And then our days 5 and 6, we drove over to Gatlinburg and stayed in Gatlinburg, which, as John mentioned, is a bit of whiplash. From Townsend to Gatlinburg, it's so hard to put into words what Gatlinburg is and what it feels like. I will say we've been to the Smokies many times, and the first time we went and we drove through Gatlinburg and we stayed in Gatlinburg, and I was just like, this is the worst. What is this?
Right.
And then we went back a few times and it was like, oh, it's kind of fun. I kind of like it. It's kitschy and there's some weird stuff that you can do and it's different than anywhere else. And so then I started like warming up to it, like, okay, yeah, I actually kind of like this. And then this last trip, we went back and we were in Gatlinburg and I was like, nope, hate this.
This was not Ash Loves Gatlinburg trip.
It was not.
We have had lots of those, but this was not one of them. And I think it's because we went from busy, crazy to super calm and nice.
Well,
and then back to crazy.
But I especially loved Townsend this trip.
Yeah.
I feel like I just maybe needed more peace in my life. Or something, because Townsend was like so idyllic. And then we got over to Gatlinburg and I was like, nope, don't want to do any of this. Like, this does not look fun. There's people everywhere. There's traffic everywhere. Like, I was not in the right headspace for Gatlinburg this time. But it was fine because then we just went into the park. We didn't spend a ton of time in Gatlinburg. We did a few things. Restaurants in Gatlinburg, I still have yet to be like super wowed by anywhere we've really eaten in Gatlinburg, except for Crockett's, which we love. We really love Crockett's.
And we have covered Crockett's really good in one of our food episodes.
Yeah.
But so Crockett's, we absolutely love it. But I think we found some better options more near Pigeon Forge.
Yeah, I do feel like we keep kind of going out. There's an unlimited number of options for restaurants, but I do feel like it's kind of more in the tourist trap type of style for most of the restaurants. So that's a little bit harder. But as far as like why we stay in Gatlinburg and why I put up with all the craziness sometimes is because it is in such close proximity to a lot of the things in the national park that we really like to do.
Right.
And so from the Gatlinburg side, that's where it's just really easy to access the Newfound Gap Road. You can get to the Mammoth Cave trailhead. You can get to Newfound Gap. You can get to the Appalachian Trail. You can get to Klingman's Dome. Mm-hmm. All of that is really easy to access from Gatlinburg. So
the Roaring Fork is right there.
The Roaring Fork is right there, which is this is so hard to say. Roaring Fork Motor Nature Trail.
It's quite a mouthful.
It's just a scenic drive with some really cool stops and some great hikes along there. And that starts right from basically downtown Gatlinburg.
Right.
And so it just makes sense to be over on the Gatlinburg side, really, for a lot of these. And then if you do like the activities, if you want to go to the Ripley's Believe It or Not, or the mountain coasters, or the Activate is something that's really popular in Gatlinburg. It's like a real life video game. Mini golfing, go-karting, like there's so many options. Dollywood.
Right.
So you can spend days here, both in the park and outside of the park. This is also the area where we like to go to Laurel Falls and the Elkmont campground area and stuff like that. So it really is super convenient to this part of the national park, which is why we stay there. And most of the time it's fun.
Yeah. One thing I will say that we kind of tested this last trip that turned out to be perfect and exactly what we were hoping is even though this Great Smoky Mountains National Park is the most visited national park by leaps and bounds over any other national park, we were kind of testing the itinerary to kind of make sure that our timing and everything is perfect and that everything works well. And oh my gosh, I just love that despite how busy it is, the itinerary works great.
It does. And even if Gatlinburg is really busy, a lot of those people that are there to see Gatlinburg aren't necessarily there to do stuff in the Smokies.
Right.
And so it's nice actually to leave the craziness of downtown Gatlinburg and to get into the Smokies and be like, a lot of these people are just driving through. Right. A lot of them don't really stop. And so if you want to do a hike or if you want to explore deeper into the park, you don't really get those Gatlinburg crowds most of the time.
Yeah,
it will still be busy, but
you'll be in the park with more of the parkies.
Yeah, we got to stick together, us park people. So you get in there, you hit the trail, and you're like, these are my people. There we go.
Right.
You know, these are the people that came here to actually see the Smokies and not to go to Ripley's Believe It or Not. Because
Gatlinburg is its own attraction.
Yeah.
And the Smoky Mountains is its own attraction. They're close in proximity, but they don't always necessarily cross paths.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
It is. So basically we did 4 full days in Great Smoky Mountains National Park, which is what I recommend to everybody.
Right.
There's enough to keep you busy for 4 full days and to have a really, really cool experience in this park. So if you need any help with that, we have our Great Smoky Mountains itinerary that will cover you for up to 4 days of getting to all the busy, most popular spots.
Right.
And so that's what we did. So we take our own advice. We did 4 days.
We do take our own advice.
Yeah, and I highly recommend that. One alternative, if you don't want to stay in Gatlinburg, you could actually drive down to the southern part of the park and stay in Cherokee, which is the North Carolina side, and drive to a lot of these same places from the North Carolina side. Because a lot of them, like Newfound Gap and stuff, it's on the Tennessee-North Carolina state line. So whether you're driving in from Gatlinburg or Cherokee, it's about the same amount of time. And Cherokee is much quieter.
Right.
So that's another option as well. But at that point, so after we finished up at the Smokies, that's when we hit North Carolina.
Right.
And there's some cool things you can do in North Carolina in the Smokies. Like, we really like the Deep Creek area near Bryson City. There's some really cool waterfall hikes down there.
Right.
Cataloochee is on that side, which is a beautiful historic area of Great Smokies. So spend the morning doing something over there on the North Carolina side, whatever is most interesting to you.
Right, exactly. This is where, during this trip, we learned something that was so cool and that we super enjoyed. We've kind of seen a little bit of it, but I think it was once we reached North Carolina and did some of the things on this side that we realized that this really is a regional phenomenon. And that is front porch sitting wherever you go.
It was crazy. I've never seen so many people doing this, and I really want to be those people.
It was awesome.
I was so jealous.
We're kind of referring to the Alan Jackson song where he talks about
where I come from, it's front porch sitting.
Exactly. It's so true. When we were in Cades Cove, we saw people put camp chairs in the back of their truck and drive around Cades Cove. When we were at some of the overlooks along the Newfound Gap Road, we saw people that had brought their camp chairs just to sit at these overlooks. And when we had reached the North Carolina side, that's when we realized, especially when we started going along the Blue Ridge Parkway, at almost every overlook, they had brought Subway, or they brought lunch, or they brought
wine. We saw people just sitting there drinking wine, talking to their friends, sitting in their camp chairs, just with the beautiful Blue Ridge mountain views.
It was amazing. I'm sure we've seen it before, but I think this trip specifically, we saw so many people doing it.
I was so jealous. I was like, we're in a rental car.
Where's my truck?
We have our carry-on bags. Like, we had no chairs. And I wanted to sit and do some front porch sitting like all these other people that were just like such a slower pace.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah,
I loved it, especially the people that were just sitting there as a group of 4 people sitting and drinking wine just at an overlook. And I was just like, that looks nice.
I know. What have I been doing? Trying to do all these hikes and see all these sights. I just need to sit for a minute.
I know. Awesome.
Yeah, it was so cool. So that was our time in the Smokies. We specifically timed our trip to be there over the Synchronous Firefly event.
Oh, it was awesome.
That happens at the beginning of June. That's been on my bucket list forever. It was incredible. Absolutely incredible. It was. I can't think of a cooler thing I've ever seen in any national park.
If you don't know what we're talking about with synchronous fireflies, you can probably imagine a bunch of fireflies out in a field all blinking at whatever time, and it's kind of cool. Synchronous fireflies, I didn't even realize it until we got there how cool it was actually going to be. We would hike up this trail where the rangers kind of tell you this is the spot, and you kind of spread out. They only let a certain number of people in, and you kind of try to find a spot along the trail where you have decent visibility up the mountain. And as the night goes on, it gets darker and darker. And as night falls, you'll start to see some fireflies here and there blinking. But over time, they suddenly get into sync. And it's almost by elevation where you'll look up the mountain at the very top. It'll be like 3 blinks, blink, 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 and then it will just move down the mountain. And like each section will just blink. It's like you're at a Christmas light festival. And it's
really
so
was
cool.
Amazing. Yeah. So we left the Smokies and our kids were just like, this is seriously the coolest national park ever.
Yes.
Which is always what you want to hear. It's something they weren't expecting a whole lot from, and they ended up just absolutely loving it. The whole trip was awesome. So again, if you need any help with your Smokies stuff, we've got tons of resources at Dirt in My Shoes to help you with that. But day 7, we're on the North Carolina side in the morning, and then we head to the Blue Ridge Parkway, which connects Great Smoky Mountains on the North Carolina side near Cherokee to Shenandoah up in Virginia. And so it's just a really cool drive. At this point, we were not planning on going to Shenandoah.
Right.
You can do that if you want. That will add a couple days to the trip at least.
I will say, I'm not sure that I have the endurance to do the full Blue Ridge Parkway really quickly. I would have to spread it out over several days.
It's a lot of driving, and it's a lot of curvy, slow roads.
Right.
But we love the Blue Ridge Parkway around this area. In a lot of ways, you actually kind of get better Smoky Mountain views from the Blue Ridge Parkway than you do from the actual park itself.
Right.
And so I like to go up there just to take pictures of the Smokies. But we drove in this particular trip on day 7, we drove the Blue Ridge Parkway from Cherokee up to Asheville, North Carolina. And it was just absolutely beautiful, especially as you get to the higher portions of the road. You'll start getting some really cool views. There's lots of tunnels. We really like the Water Rock Knob Visitor Center area. That's a really good place to stop and get some views and learn more about the Blue Ridge Parkway and the different things you can see. I think the highlight of driving the Blue Ridge Parkway wasn't even on the Blue Ridge Parkway, but we did make the side trip to Sliding Rock, which you'll pass pretty close by it as you drive the Blue Ridge Parkway from the Smokies up to Asheville. So definitely make that side trip. Go to Sliding Rock. It's it's just a rock water slide, basically.
It's awesome.
Yeah. And so that was awesome. We have never done that before. I've always wanted to. And I felt like it was exactly what I hoped it would be. It was also nice to get there a little bit later in the afternoon and evening because people started to clear out and it was a lot quieter actually when we were there. So
it's so interesting. At some point, they do have lifeguards and people there kind of managing it. And it does cost a few bucks per person to get in. But at a certain point, I think it was like 5:30 or 6 o'clock, the lifeguards say, okay, you're swimming at your own risk now, and they bail.
Yeah.
And at that point, they kind of close up the changing rooms and everything like that, and you're on your own. And the crowds disappear, so you have it all to yourself, which was really cool. And the lines were gone and everything like that, but you don't have somebody there in case something happens. So you do need to be a little bit careful if you want to go later in the evening. But it was so worth it. We
went around dinner time, and when we got there, there were still a bunch of people, but within 15, 20 minutes, it started to clear out really good, and then we just could slide to our heart's contents.
It was awesome.
So it was really fun. All 4 of us did it, even our youngest. You have to be able to swim to slide on the rock. So definitely if you have younger kids, they won't be able to do it. They do have to be able to swim on their own. But it was a bucket list item for me. I was so excited to go there, and I absolutely loved it. So I would add that in for sure. So that kind of finished out our day, just making our way from the Smokies over to Asheville. Day 8, we spent the day in Asheville most of the day. Oh, and I should say, so there's 2 different restaurants that we tried this particular time that were recommended by our own audience. I asked you all. I know. And so we went to the White Duck Taco Shop, which was awesome.
It was so good.
My favorites, we tried a bunch. I really liked the fish taco. That was so good.
Oh, yeah.
And the Korean beef bulgogi was so good.
Yes.
What was your favorite?
Ooh, Korean beef was really good. There was a couple, it was the pork. I think there was a pork one that you didn't necessarily like, but I liked a lot.
It was too big of a chunk of meat, but it had watermelon rind,
which was
on
so
it, and
weird,
it was really good.
Good.
I liked the watermelon. I just didn't like the chunky meat.
Yeah. When our youngest got a kid's meal taco, and you tried it.
It was good.
It was really good.
Yeah. But it's just right down there by the river, kind of in the arts district of Asheville, and it was so busy.
The building is so funny, though.
Yeah.
It's like an arms depot that's just been painted nice.
With tons of insulation.
It's such a funny place. But when we got there, the parking lot is huge, and it needs a huge parking lot because the line is out the door.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was a solid recommendation. Our day 8, we did a little more than half a day in Asheville, and that was spent mostly at the Biltmore. I really wanted to go see the Biltmore and tour the house and see the gardens. I was so excited to do that. That's something I've never done.
If Mr. Darcy was American, that's where he would be from.
Yeah.
It was incredible.
Yeah.
So many fireplaces, so many staircases, so many 5,000 a year. No, it was amazing. It was incredible. I can't say enough about the gardens. They were beautiful. but the house had like hidden passageways, and they have a walking tour, an audio tour that you can listen to for grown-ups and for kids. So
the kids love the kids audio tour. Like, they were so excited after their stop, after they heard it. They would wait for ours to be done and then just like tell us all that they learned. They loved it.
Yeah.
So that audio tour was spot on.
Yes.
For the kids. The gardens, yes. I loved the library. That was probably my favorite room. I think yours was the grand banquet hall or whatever. I
loved the banquet hall. Yeah. It reminded me of the Great Hall from Harry Potter. I just wanted them to decorate in my house colors.
Yeah. It was amazing. It was more than I thought it would be, both in price and beauty.
Yes, that is very true. The whole house, there's even gargoyles on the turrets or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, it was really fun.
Well, and the whole basement area, I was not expecting that either. I thought the tour was over once we went upstairs. You do the main floor, then you go upstairs. And I was like, okay, we're done. And no, there's a whole nother like third of the tour that takes you down into the basement where the swimming pool and the gym and the party room and all that was down there, all the servants' quarters and stuff. Anyway, it was just a huge house. It took a while.
If you like Downton Abbey, and when you have all
total Downton Abbey vibes, where it's just like, this is where Thomas would be, and this is where Mr. Bates and
Mr. Bates.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That was all
I'm trying to remember the cook lady, whatever her name is.
Mrs. Patmore.
Mrs. Patmore. Yeah. Yes, that's right. You got to see
we saw her domain.
It was awesome.
There was a couple dumb waiters too, which was cool to see. I don't know. It was just, it was exactly what, I mean, it is an American manor home.
Yeah.
So.
It's true.
Anything to rival England's, I would say.
Oh, definitely.
Because I tour those houses all the time. Anytime there's an old house that I can snoop around in, I'm there.
It was so cool. Definite Downton Abbey vibes at that place.
Yeah. And like I said, our kids loved the audio tour. So I think if you have kids that if you want to go and maybe you're worried about your kids being entertained, ours did fine. Our youngest is 7 and he loved it. That was really fun. And then for lunch, we went into Asheville downtown. We walked around some of the shops and things like that. And we went to Tupelo Honey for lunch, which I ordered the best food probably I had the whole trip.
It was so good.
It was so good.
You gave me your leftovers.
I know. I got the chicken and biscuits and it was amazing. It was so, so delicious. And then we got banana pudding. I order banana pudding at every restaurant when we go to the South. I love banana pudding. And theirs was my favorite of the trip.
It was really good. It was even better than Bucky's pudding, which is probably, I don't know, I might be ruffling some feathers there. Yeah. It was so good.
I do like the Bucky's pudding fine, but the Tupelo Honey was better. So we did that for lunch. And then at that point, we're afternoon, day 8, we're driving to Mammoth Cave.
Yes.
And it's a pretty long drive. It's like 5.5 hours to get out to Mammoth Cave. But we're circling around. Now we're heading into Kentucky. Mammoth Cave is so cool.
I love Mammoth Cave.
We get there that evening, and then that will set you up for the next day to spend the whole day at Mammoth Cave, taking cave tours. You can do some hiking, kayaking, biking when you're not in a cave tour. But this particular trip, so I have been on every cave tour at Mammoth Cave except for the wild cave tour,
right.
The one where you actually like put on the jumpsuits and go back into uncharted territory.
Tiny spaces.
Yeah.
Really tiny spaces.
I haven't done that, but this particular trip, we took 2 more tours that pretty much finished out all the tours for me.
It was so cool. We finally got to check something off our bucket list. We have always wanted to see the river Styx. And for a while, they weren't offering that tour.
Because Mammoth Cave is a giant limestone cave that has just been carved out by rivers. That's why the passages are so huge.
Right.
They had like full rivers going through this cave. And it continues to be carved out by rivers. At the very basement level that we have, or that we know now, there are rivers. And I've always wanted to just see the rivers. Like, there's a river in this cave. That's crazy. And so, yeah, we took the River Styx tour this time, which actually does take you down to the river level where we saw the River Styx, and then also the Echo River is down there. We didn't get to see that one, but we could hear it.
Yes.
And we got to do our echo, which is how it got its name.
It was so cool. It's so amazing to see the process at work that made the longest cave system in the world.
Although I will say, I think the River Styx tour was pretty boring for our kids. Besides seeing the river, they did okay, but it was all geology.
Which I loved.
And I'm blaming it on the kids. I myself was pretty bored. I was taking pictures because I don't get really nerdy about geology. I can take a little bit and then I'm like, okay, I'm good.
Right.
It was like 2.5 hours of geology. And so I wouldn't start with that tour if you haven't been to the cave before. I would start with the historic tour because that one is really the one that shows you the giant passageways, but then also talks about all the people. Like you'll learn about like Stephen Bishop, who was an enslaved tour guide at Mammoth Cave for a long time. He discovered a lot of the passageways and new stuff at Mammoth Cave. And
his story is so cool.
It is.
He is an amazing person.
So that's kind of a big deal. You want to learn about people like that like this cave was their life and their home, and then the tuberculosis hospital and the mining, and like the cave has been used for so many different things. And the historic tour touches on all of that really well. So I would start with that one, not the River Styx. That one was just so geology heavy. And the ranger was like, we're not talking about any history in this tour. Like, don't even ask me. And I was like, oh.
It was so
just
funny.
A little bit. Like, could you just add in a little bit, please?
It was so funny. One of our kids asked a question and he was like, that sounds pretty historic.
And then he didn't answer it. And he just kept walking. So we're like, okay.
And I handled it pretty good because I was able to put on my nerd hat and be like, and what carved out this limestone? What levels of limestone and what are their names?
Yeah.
Anyways, I was fine, but I could definitely see how a less geologically interested person would have a rough time.
And it wasn't terrible. Like, I still really liked it. But I would start with the historic tour. I also really like the Grand Avenue tour if you can stand to be in the cave for 4 hours. It's a really long tour, but it's super good. Gothic Avenue is super good. The Violet City Lantern tour is super cool.
Yeah.
I really like that one. We did Domes and Dripstones this time, which is a repeat tour we've done before. That was good. It shows you some of the cave formations that you typically want to see in a cave. But to be honest, like Mammoth Cave, its formations are pretty underwhelming compared to other caves. So that's not really why you're there. You're not really there to see the formations. You're there to learn about the history and the size and the formation and all the things that makes it really cool.
If you go there and you take a historic tour and you'll go through the cave, you'll be able to appreciate the size of the cave pretty well on most tours. You don't necessarily need to focus just on geology the whole time to do that.
Yeah.
And so it was pretty fun. I think our kids' favorite sections were the sections where I struggled.
Which is everywhere. Those caves are not made for tall people.
There's a section called Fat Man's Misery and Tall Man's Agony, which has a sub-name, which is like Child's Delight or something like that. I was crouching down more than I have in almost any other cave.
Yeah.
During this section, it was intense, and the kids were just laughing at me the whole time. And Ash was behind me filming me at times when I didn't know she was
so
filming
funny.
me.
I was laughing pretty hard too. So, yeah. So, I mean, you can take one cave tour. You can take two like we did. If you time them out, you can take one in the morning and one in the afternoon if you want to get into a couple different sections of the cave. Other things that we like to do, you can hike the Green River Bluffs Trail. You can bike the Railroad Trail. There's a really nice trail system, mostly flat for biking. You can go kayaking on the Green River, which goes right through the park. I've done that, and it was really cool. We saw 1 million turtles. It's just a different way to see the area. The river was really slow moving, so that was something I was glad actually that I didn't have my kids with me that particular time because they would have been complaining a lot, I think. But that was a really fun experience too. So 1 day's worth of stuff. And really, if you want to take the half day on day 10 to do more stuff in Mammoth Cave, you can totally do that because at this point, we're just finishing up at Mammoth Cave on day 10 and then heading back down to Nashville, which is only like an hour and a half from Mammoth Cave. which that's just crazy to me that Nashville and Mammoth Cave are so close together. So you can spend the day at Mammoth Cave, then drive down to Nashville. And if you want to do more in Nashville, there's always more to do before you catch your flight or before you head home.
Right. One thing, we travel so much and we stay in so many hotels and campgrounds and different things like that. And so I usually judge how nice a hotel is based on how many spiders I kill while I'm there.
The Mammoth Cave Lodge was not great.
It was a place, the Mammoth Cave Lodge. I was so excited to stay there because you are walking distance to the visitor center and all your cave tours. And so it's super duper convenient.
I know. When I found that they had availability there, I was like, oh my gosh, yes.
But it is a land where man and beast are expected to live together. And the windows are so bad because you have like 8 inches between the window pane and the outside screen. And the management of the lodge doesn't treat that as open window space. They treat it
not part of your room.
They treat it as like a terrarium. So I remember like I got into the room and I opened up the blinds like to look out the window and I was like, whoa, just like staring down hundreds of spiders that are just like ready to pounce.
I felt a little gypped because the lodge has been like the main lodge area has been closed for a couple of years. They've been redoing it and it desperately needed it.
Yes.
And so I was like, oh my gosh, they finally have like things back open. We get to see the newly renovated lodge.
Right.
Well, I thought that also included the rooms. I thought they renovated the rooms. And then we got there and I was like, nope, still the same crappy rooms. Great. The main lodge building is a lot prettier, but the rooms were not renovated. So, yeah.
But if you're there for the wildlife, then
the spiders.
Yes, and you can see all different kinds.
But it was nice to be able to walk to our cave tours. Like, that was pretty cool. We were just right there. In fact, the cemetery was just like 30 seconds away from our lodge room.
Ooh, we're really selling it.
Yeah.
The bugs in the cemetery right next to your hotel room. The cemetery is historic. It's not creepy.
Well, it's a little creepy.
It's a little creepy if you're there at the right time of day. But then if you leave your terrarium room and you go to the cemetery, especially on Halloween, you can have a really cool, you go there with your coven, you'll have a really great Sanderson sister experience.
Nice. Yeah, that is worth mentioning, though, that the lodge was a wah-wah. Hopefully they update it soon.
Yes.
So we hit Nashville, Great Smoky Mountains, Blue Ridge Parkway, Biltmore, and Mammoth Cave.
Yeah.
In 10 days. I mean, it's a really fun road trip with a lot of variety because you have the cities and more of the amenities and luxuries that you probably might want mixed in with all the natural spaces in between.
Right.
So it is kind of a whiplash trip because it's like city, country, city, country, city, country. But it's fun and it adds a lot of variety into the trip. It keeps everybody kind of on their toes. Every day is a little bit different. And so this is a road trip that I hope you're able to take with your family at some point because it was a real big hit with our family this summer.
Okay, so for your task today, we want you to go to the Dirt in My Shoes Facebook or Instagram because we hit 3 really good national park units along this road trip. We got the Great Smoky Mountains, Blue Ridge Parkway, Mammoth Cave. And so we want to know which one is either your favorite or the one that you're most excited to visit. Extra points for pictures.
Yeah. Tell us which one sounded the most fun to you. If you've been, let us know some of your favorite stops as well. But that's our 10-day road trip. I think it's a win.
Oh, yeah. I would do that again for sure.
And you can always find something new to do. That's what I like about this area, too.
It's true.
You will not run out.
You can shorten it a little bit. You could lengthen it a little bit. But this is a great way to see a lot of different things using an airport as kind of your anchor point that you cycle back to from the beginning and go back to at the end.
Yeah. So we hope you enjoy this road trip through the Tennessee, North Carolina, and Kentucky parks. If you enjoyed this episode or if you're enjoying the podcast, please leave us a 5-star review on Apple or share the podcast with your friends. We are so grateful for all of you. Thank you for joining us today and be sure to get some dirt in your shoes.